So there's a scene in the Exodus story, where the Israelites are doing their usual fractious foolishness and whining about the fact that they're lost and bemoaning the loss of their privileges under the Pharaoh and complaining about the power dynamics of their leadership and just generally being followers of Cain, let's say. And God, the cruel God that you refer to, decides to send among his suffering subjects poisonous snakes to bite them, which seems a little over the top, you might say. But in response to that, I would say there's no situation so terrible that some damn fool can't make it infinitely worse. And so that's what happens to the Israelites. So they're being bitten by these poisonous snakes, and the leaders of the people who've wandered from God go to Moses and they say, look, we know you've got a pipeline to God, and there's a lot of snakes and they're doing a lot of biting, and maybe you could just ask him to, call off the serpents. And so Moses, who's not very happy with the Israelites either, decides that he'll go talk to God. And God says something very strange. He doesn't say, to hell with the Israelites, more snakes is what they need. And he doesn't say, well, I produced a snake, so I'll get rid of them. He says something very, very peculiar. He says, have the Israelites gather together all their bronze and make a giant stake and put a serpent on it, a bronze serpent, which is the symbol of healing, by the way, that even the Greeks use, that symbol of Asclepius. It's a very old symbol, very widespread. It's still used by physicians today. And then he says, put it up where the Israelites can see it, and if they go look at it, then the serpent's poison won't harm them. And I read that and I thought, that's exactly what psychotherapists discovered as they all converged in the 20th century on the utility of exposure therapy as curative. And that's the pharmacon. A little of the poison that hurts you cures you. It's the same principle that's used for vaccines, by the way. So what we saw in psychotherapy is that if you get people to voluntarily confront the things that are poisoning them, so to speak, that hurt their life, that frighten them and disgust them, they become braver and more well adapted. It isn't that they become less afraid, because that's been very carefully tested. It's that they learn by watching themselves expose themselves to the things that they once fled from, that there's more to them than they think, and that generalizes across situations. And it's the same mechanism that underlies learning as such, because children, when they learn, put themselves on the edge of ragged disaster, and that's where they advance. And so what God tells the Israelites, essentially, in this dramatic endeavor, is that it's better for them to face the terrors that confront them than to be shielded from the terrors, or for them to hide from them. That they'll be better people if they face what's right in front of them, even if it's poisonous. And so it's like, okay, that's pretty damn interesting and quite remarkable. And then that symbol is used, for example, by the Greeks to symbolize medicine as such. But then there's this additional weird twist, which is Christ identifies with that bronze serpent. You think, okay, that's a very peculiar thing for anyone to do. What exactly does that mean? Well, so then you might say, well, what's the most poisonous thing that you could possibly face if you dramatized the idea of poison itself? If you wanted people to face what was worst so that they could become strongest? And the answer to that is the most unjust possible painful death and the ultimate confrontation with malevolence. And that's what's dramatized in the Passion story. Now, does that redeem everyone? Maybe. Maybe the idea is that if we were courageous enough to look death in the face unflinchingly, and if we spent our time putting our finger on the source of evil itself, it would revitalize ourselves to a degree that would be unimaginable. Now, as a biologist, you could think about this too, because I don't remember the philosopher who said it. I think it was Whitehead, but that might be wrong. We let our ideas die instead of us, right? So human beings have evolved so that we can undergo these deaths of our own ideas and the rejuvenation that emerges in consequence of that. That seems to be something like evolution towards what? Towards the process of sacrificial logos as the thing that redeems human beings. And that makes us biologically unique too, because we can die in ideation and imagination instead of dying in actuality. Does that fundamentally redeem us? Does that deliver us from death and evil? Maybe. Like, the job isn't done. Obviously,
a pivotal psychological insight underpins Jordan Peterson's analysis of the Exodus story. Exposure therapy's role in resilience. Studies reveal that exposure therapy, where patients voluntarily confront their fears, lessens the impact of anxiety and builds psychological strength. This aligns with Peterson's view that facing the poison allows individuals to become braver, learning not to be less afraid, but rather to see their own capacity for strength. In this context, exposure therapy isn't just a therapeutic tool, it's a means of personal transformation, revealing that we can confront what feels insurmountable. Peterson's interpretation finds resonance in the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche's assertion that what does not kill us makes us stronger embodies a similar principle of facing adversity as a means of self-transformation. For Nietzsche, suffering was a teacher, and embracing hardship was a path to personal greatness. Peterson draws on this in his depiction of the Israelites facing their fears by observing the bronze serpent, symbolizing the necessity of facing one's internal and external threats to foster growth. Peterson's commentary on the bronze serpent goes further, equating the serpent with Christ, who embodies the ultimate confrontation with malevolence. His insight here is deeply symbolic, positioning Christ's willingness to face unjust suffering as the highest form of exposure therapy, a universal lesson in resilience. By comparing the serpent to Christ's acceptance of the cross, Peterson suggests that confronting our own fears and poisons can lead us toward redemption and self-actualization. This perspective challenges us to face our struggles with courage, proposing that by bravely acknowledging our fears and failures, we find within ourselves a strength that's transformative and, in many ways, life-saving. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, and share with a friend. Let us know in the comments what resonated with you. See you next time.